Jacinda Ardern.
Mr Chair, I rise to take a very brief call, and it relates somewhat to the provisions that the member who's just resumed her seat was speaking to. And as I discussed in part one, Mr Chair, I am concerned around the consistency of the age of criminal responsibility that is scattered through this bill. I'm speaking specifically to clause 13. Clause 13. New section 124A bar 1. If you make a cross-reference back to the Crimes Act, there are some significant differences to when compared to the amendments we're making today. New section 124A1 provides that a person of or over the age of 16 years is liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 3 years if he or she intentionally exposes a person under the age of 16 years to indecent material, whether written, spoken, visual or otherwise, alone or in combination, and communicating in any manner directly or indirectly with the young person. 2 points. I agree that there are, at the moment, it seems that we are debating legislation in this House, controversial legislation around digital harm, which has an overlap to this legislation. You know, there has been some discussion as to whether or not we're creating inconsistencies with what's able to happen in an online context versus what will happen elsewhere. And so I think it is important that we're consistent in the way that we legislate in this area. My concern is that this is an increase in the potential term that might be applied, 3 years as opposed to 2, I believe, as it's currently written in the Crimes Act under this section. But also the Crimes Act is silent on age. The Crimes Act does not specify the relevant age, so we assume that it's the age of criminal responsibility applies in the provision as it may apply currently. That's my assumption, just on my quick read of the Crimes Act. But now we are creating liability if an individual is of or over the age of 16 years. Question again, why 16 years? When the legislation, the Crimes Act, it's 17. So why 16 years in this legislation? There might be justification for that. It might be that you create another another regime that applies to young people. But I'm consistently concerned that there is an erosion of the youth justice system in the way that we are no longer differentiating between adult and child. That we have consistencies across our legislation when it comes to care and protection at 17, when it comes to the age of criminal responsibility at 17. For care and protection, it's the lowest age in the developed world that someone will exit care and protection. When it comes to criminal justice, it's 17. When it comes to being able to take out tenancy agreements, it's 18. Accessing most of our benefits, it's 18. I believe even real estate licences at least wait till 18. There's a few things that sit at 21. Cyberbullying is 14. We have to decide in this Parliament when we consider an individual to have moved from child to youth to adult. And if we listen to the overseas jurisdictions where they have generally stuck to a rule of thumb that it's 0 to 12, 12 to 18, or it might be 14, and then 18 on, you're considered an adult. And yet in our legislation, we are consistently all over the shop. Now, I understand carve-outs for legislation as it relates to, for instance, significant crime like murder. I understand that. But I am concerned that we have potted through our legislation different ages for liability. Now, if we do that, I think we should be explicit that that individual should still be considered a young person or child for the purposes of the way that that is dealt with perhaps in the court. If we are going to say we want that liability to apply to a 16-year-old, perhaps you say, therefore, from 16 to 18 we want it dealt with in the youth court, for instance. Because that is what the youth court is designed to do. Maybe then your penalty regime for that age group might be different. We're not saying ignore the issue. We are saying make sure the response is catered to work with a young person, and based on the fact that we know the evidence tells us that the earlier you criminalise a young person, the less likelihood you have of being able to turn that situation around. I look forward to the Minister's response.
David Clendon.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Can I just acknowledge the